If your scrap pile looks like this, stick around and watch this video because we're gonna take all of this and turn it into these. Hi, it's Caitlin, and in today's video, I'm shooting to eliminate most of this scrap pile. My eye has been on this target for a while. I think it's my best shot at aiming for some quick sales at some upcoming craft shows. Let's get to it. Now that I have all my pieces sorted kind of by size, I'm ready to get started. Any pieces that I found not usable, I chucked them in my wood boiler. I'm now gonna set my chop saw to 45 degrees. I started by cutting my arrowheads, so I took a longer board that I had, cut a 45, and then kept flipping the board to continue cutting the angles for my arrowheads. If you have a hard time lining up the saw blade each time, you can also use a speed square to mark and make your cuts. After my arrowheads are complete, I'm going to use my handy dandy double stick tape and I'm going to attach it to a piece of wood that has a 45-degree angle already cut. And then I'm going to take this piece and use it as a stop block on my chop saw. Now I'm going to move on to my tail fins. These are going to need a 45-degree cut on both ends going in the same direction. You will want to keep all these the same length to keep it looking uniform. That's why I use the stop block to bump against. Now that I have them all sanded, I'm going to go ahead and assemble these so I can get working on the next style. When I was sanding, I tried to keep everything in piles because I had planned on certain ones going on certain arrows. I have all different widths, I have all different lengths. I just cut and went with it. I didn't really have a plan. I just found boards out of my scrap pile that looked good. I squared up the ends with the chop saw. I did find my bandsaw very handy in this project. Because some of these came off old pallets, the widths were not consistent, so I ran the straight edge against the fence on my bandsaw and ripped them down to size. I did find it challenging at times to be dealing with different sizes and thicknesses of wood, so I also used my bandsaw to resaw the main piece of my arrows if the thickness was not matching up to be thinner than the arrowhead. There are some consistencies and then some things that are not consistent at all. But I think it's going to make them really unique. They're going to look really cute when they're all finished. Now I just use wood glue to glue all my pieces together. I didn't measure and mark anything. I just went with close enough. This arrow was one of my favorites because it used a piece of walnut and I really love walnut. Let me know down in the comments what you do with your scrap wood. While these are gluing up, I'm going to move on to the next style of arrow. I have 3 longer boards here and I thought these 3 would be perfect for hook style arrows. These are going to be just a little different. The head's going to be a different style. They're going to be 2 pieces assembled together instead of 1. These are 45 on both ends going in the same direction and these measure 3.5 inches. I used the same process for the tail fins as I did for the other arrows. I wanted to get these glued up as soon as possible because I wanted to get them sanded and stained before I assembled them. I used wood glue and also super glue to get them to tack up faster. After the glue dried and I sanded them, it was time to put some stain on all the parts. This is something that I thought would be easier to do before I assembled the arrows. After the stain dried, I also did a chalk paint on a couple of them and then sanded that off. This is a method that I've used in another video on plywood backers, so if you'd like to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description. For assembling my arrows, I used super glue to glue the pieces on, and then I used brad nails. Before I put the hooks on the front, I'm gonna put the hanging hooks on the back. I always use this little jig that I made to put my hooks on, so that way I'm always putting the hooks on in the same spot, and then I use my ratcheting screwdriver to put the screws in. Now I'm going to use that same method to put my hooks on the front. I've already measured and evenly spaced the hooks. Now I'm just using this to mark all my holes and get the hooks put in, and then I'm done. Now they're done and they turned out super cute. Now I'm going to show you one last way that you could make an arrow. First, I'm going to measure and mark the center of my main piece. Then I'm going to use my combination square to draw my angles to the center. This is going to make it easier for me to cut my angles on the chop saw. Unlike the first arrows, these are going to have a pointed shaft. Then I'm going to cut the arrowhead just like I cut the last ones, with a 45-degree angle on both ends in the same direction. As I'm getting to the end of this project, it's getting a little tricky trying to figure out what pieces I could use for these last few arrows. I have gotten rid of so much scrap, I'm really happy. I still have quite a bit left. With these arrows, it took a little bit of playing around with different thicknesses and different widths of boards. I did keep moving my stop block so that way I would get wider fins than others. I also had some really thin wood that I used on top of the arrow shaft, so that way it would give it a cool layered look, and I really liked that. After I got all my arrows cut, I used the same sanding and gluing method that I used for the first arrow, and then I got out all my stains and I started to go to town staining. I did them a bunch of different colors. Some of them I just clear coated, and then some I put chalk paint over after the stain had dried for 24 hours. Thanks for sticking around and watching this video. If you found value in this video, go ahead and give me a big thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button to stay up to date with all my latest projects, tips, or to be inspired. You can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram at Stronger by Grace Designs. Don't forget to check out my website, links in the description or links on my banner. See you next time.